Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I'm joined by David Dean. David is an author, speaker, and business AI realist who explores how artificial intelligence reshapes work, judgment, and accountability in organizations. Rather than focusing on AI capabilities, he examines the human elements that remain essential, how people navigate uncertainty, where accountability lies when AI assists in decisions, and what holds organizations together when technology accelerates faster than clarity. His philosophy is grounded in the simple truth: AI doesn't understand confidence, risk, or consequence. People do. And that's why people still matter. His book is An Inbox Between Us, where he uses the concept of how we work with email as a metaphor for systems, insights, and process, and how we can understand the hidden systems in our organizations to create better improvement, get through roadblocks and hurdles and those kinds of things. So we talk a lot in this about those hidden systems, what they are, how to surface them, and then also how to begin to adopt AI, because that is where the world is going. And both how to adopt it personally, how to adopt it across our teams, and how to really do the upfront discovery work to make sure that we are implementing these in the right way, that we're actually evolving our organizations, our teams, and ourselves in a positive direction rather than just replacing existing work with a new tool. Fun conversation, hyper relevant in what's going on in the world today. Hope you enjoy David Dean. Here is our conversation. David, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on and talk about systems today and the hidden systems within our business. And so I've done an episode this year where we talked about systems thinking, and I think we're going to go a little bit deeper on this episode and talk about some of the hidden systems in our business. And so I'm interested to understand what those are. I cheated. I read your book, but we'll talk about what those are.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be able to talk about this with you.
So let's get right into it. I guess just a quick intro on what is your background and how did you come to start building these theses around the different systems in our businesses?
So in my entire career, I've had the opportunity to work intimately with ground level business teams through a number of different roles. It got more sophisticated and more mature over time, moving from support engineer aspect, infrastructure standpoint, more into enterprise architect around a lot of the communication collaboration technology, and then eventually moving into solution system design as a part of my career. And then getting into some of the kind of solution development processes and also being able to onboard citizen development in organizations with it. And because of that proximity to the information that everyone works with every day, their collaboration data, it gave me some insights, and especially when I move into the AI world, around things that a lot of people don't ultimately think about, and working with the different teams and saying, why does this exist? And I'm not talking about from just we just use it to manage system A or system B. It's more of the feelings, like what came of it? What was the history of what caused this to happen? Why do you still rely on it? And it's those kinds of systems that ultimately reveals all kinds of insight. And I've had the working with thousands of systems, tens of thousands likely, over my career to understanding these behaviors. And I decided to put it together. And as I was moving into the AI journey, because I felt that there was something there, that a story needs to be told, because there's a lot of confusion out there for the everyday business individual as well as leader on what this changing world means when it comes to AI.
And so what are the hidden systems? I think you teased it there a little bit, but what are the hidden systems?
So I talk about that there's two forms of systems. There's the documented one, which is our standard operating procedure, org charts, job descriptions. We have documented artifacts in the organization that basically say, this is how our business runs, and this is how we do our jobs every day, or how we're supposed to do our jobs every day, and this is what the teams do, and that sort of thing. And then there's something what I call the unwritten contract, or the undocumented system, which is how the business really actually runs. And so while there are steps in a core process, like step A, step B, step C, and those are well known, the steps that make step A and step B really actually happen is all of those undocumented steps.
Yeah.
I'm person A that goes talks to person B that talks to person C in order to get the right answer or to do X, Y, and Z, and then I come back to complete that step. That undocumented process is really how these things happen in organizations, and that's something that is a critical piece in this changing world when it comes to AI.
This is going to be a weird analogy, but I remember listening to an episode of the Tim Ferriss show where he was talking about a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, world champion, and coach. And I think the guy's name was Marcelo. Mm-hmm. And he talks about how he would roll with Marcelo. So if you're not familiar with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, rolling is sparring. It's the kind of wrestling that jiu-jitsu is. You call it rolling. So rolling with him, like even a high level practitioner would go to do a move. And by the time you got to the move, he had already unwound you and tapped you out, because where you saw one move, he saw all the micro moves that you were doing, all the little hidden tells and body language and things that indicated that your body was about to do something or moving in that direction. And he would read between the moves and was able to then cut you off. And I use that as a weird analogy to say the systems are the moves. And most of us look at our business or our process and we're saying like, okay, first I do step A, then I do step B, then I do step C. But to really figure out what's going on, like the masters of figuring out how work is flowing in the organizations are looking at the moves between the moves.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that's critically important because a lot of those moves are based on why we hire people to begin with. It comes down to responsibility and accountability. But you think about almost every job description, there's a line like other duties apply with that.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's like there's the documented and there's all the undocumented with it. And that undocumented is a whole bunch of stuff that no one really knows on how they do their job until someone leaves the organization. Now someone else has to pick all this stuff up. Oh my goodness, this is what they had to do and that type of thing. And every organization has this. There's not, no matter how small or how big, every organization has what I call offline work, offline behavior, undocumented behavior around it. But it's not just about tasks. It's thinking, as what you brought up. There's a number of things that humans do naturally because of their lived experience. And I think this is a critical conversation in regards to why people matter, is because people understand lived consequence and lived experience with that. And all of that history and all that knowledge, it's not just what they know, it's in their bodies with it. And I wrote a newsletter on this, expanding on my book around the LaGuardia incident that happened where the plane crash had occurred and the pilot had a 6-second decision to either aim directly for the truck or swerve. In that 6 seconds, based on all of his knowledge, all of his experience, everything that he does, he made a choice. And because he understands that lived consequence, what that means is. And that's why we have them as pilots. That's why we have all this experience around it. And that's why we rely on them. Based on that decision, he understood what was going to happen to him and the pilot likely, but likely everyone else was going to live. And so he made that choice. This is why we hire people, and this is why people are important.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's a harrowing example because ultimately those two chose a path where they lost their own lives. But I think stark examples often paint a clearest picture. So you talk about email being the sort of the hidden system. Can you just bridge that gap between this concept of hidden systems and how email plays in there?
Yeah, email is one of those hidden systems, which ties to why I titled my book the way I do it, The Inbox Between Us. Everyone understands what the inbox is. Everyone generally understands what the inbox does. And I use that as a metaphor to talk about this hidden system. And if you were to ask yourself, where is this undocumented system documented? Because it is documented somewhere. That hidden system is documented in our communication and collaboration data. We exchange information back and forth. We talk about issues, problems, challenges, processes, all those different types of things. The ups and lows, the praises and the follies, they're all documented, what I call in the inbox. And so when you put together all communication data, instant message, emails, transcripts, meeting notes, all those different types of things where we do dynamically and organically every day, that is really where our undocumented system is documented in it. It's all over the place and it's highly distributed, but that system is what I call the inbox. It's like that highway of information exchange and information knowledge relating to the organization. And now what I when I talk about that system, AI has now entered that system. And that changes everything for an organization when it has now entered that system, because that is now all discoverable if you can ask the right questions.
All right. Well, that might be a good segue. How do we get insight into these systems? Like, how do we peel the layers back and see the moves between the moves?
So, one thing I talk about is self-service AI, is that I literally have an open chat window where I can ask questions about myself. The one thing I highly encourage from an onboarding standpoint is use AI as a self-awareness tool. Before you figure out what AI can do for you, document what you do and then have AI help you understand where those opportunities are. So use it as a self-realization, self-discovery standpoint. That will start showcasing when you start asking those types of questions against your email, against your meeting minutes and meeting chats and instant messages as a part of that, it will start revealing things that you weren't aware of necessarily. There's things that you know up here, but there's things that you're like, oh, I never even thought about that.
Do you have examples of what those might be?
Your voice, like how you talk, how you speak, how you write emails, your perspectives with it, how you execute things with it. If you can ask the right questions around it, it can start molding the kind of your digital personality in there with it. That digital personality is a dynamic. And then there's other people that have their own dynamic with it. And you remember when you think about emails and instant messages and chats, there's a copy in your inbox, there's a copy in their inbox. And then there's shared areas where those copies, but you still have access to. I can start asking these questions and start seeing dynamics and create an understanding where it's either self-realization as an employee, self-realization for peer-to-peer dynamic, organizational dynamic, team dynamic, leadership dynamic. There's all kinds of insights that you can extract. Now, it's not just like one question and all the answers there. It's usually a cultivation of questions to kind of get to ultimately what you're looking for. But that is an insight that can be incredibly valuable to understanding where is there opportunity to improve, gain insight, and take advantage in regards to my growing opportunity for AI or just self-realization in that aspect as well.
Do you have an example of how you've done that?
Yeah, probably the earliest one was to try and identify my voice. But one thing that I wanted to kind of understand was take my voice, take how I talk about things, and meeting transcripts help this a lot. And say, okay, what do I sound like to people? And then if I throw another type of persona in front of this, what do I sound like to other people? How would people interpret me when they're engaging with me? And this is really important to me as far as in this day and age of AI is authenticity. For me, I want to be authentic no matter who I work with. I also want to be authentic with myself with it. Being able to maintain that awareness, transparency, and consistency is important, because that, to me, that builds trust with people, trust with myself, and I'm doing the right thing and speaking the right language that they would generally understand.
Yeah, I love that. I just wrote that down. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take some of my podcast transcripts and I'm going to have it coach me on how to be a better interviewer. Might be a little late to the game. We're 240 something episodes in, but hey, you can always
Yeah,
get better. But that would be
absolutely.
interesting. And I could see doing that at work too, like just taking the transcript of a meeting. Hey, rate my participation in this meeting. How did I come across? I think that that's really interesting. I actually just set up a Claude co-work for myself this last 2 weeks. And I've been following, there's this great guy, I've referenced him on here before. Jeff Sue is a content creator who specializes in AI, like easy AI tutorial videos. So plug for him because he's been super helpful. Check his stuff out. But that was one of the recommendations, was take like 5 recent writing samples. So I took 2 emails. I took an intro email. I took like a reply where my answer might be shorter. I took a LinkedIn post and I took maybe a couple other things and I dumped it in and just said, analyze my writing style. And it was wild. Like the tone, the length, how I use different words, how I vary sentence length. It really was a pretty detailed analysis. And then I was able within that to say, create rules so that I can enter into the system so that you know my tone. And anytime I ask you to write something for me, you do it in my tone. And it just said, boom. And it just bulleted out all the things. And then you can put that into the whatever AI system it is so that it remembers your tone. And you're nodding like, no, duh. I just figured this out recently. You're like, great. You just found the internet. Congrats. But I think it's like, you can do that with a lot of things. You can have that analyze a lot of different aspects of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Just take any kind of dynamic, shopping dynamic. You probably don't want to do that, but a shopping dynamic, interpersonal dynamics with it. But from a workplace standpoint, there's also an opportunity to build better relationships with this. Is I want to be able to communicate more effectively with this other person. We may have challenges, we may have disagreements, but I need to learn to work with this individual. What can I do on my side? And it's a two-way relationship, but what can I do on my side to potentially provide suggestions or opportunities, ways of stating things with it when I'm interacting with that person? All of that dynamic is all captured in where all those undocumented processes are, that communication collaboration between it. That's going to help you create insight. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% accurate with it. You still own the judgment call on that because you are also a part of the system. You have all this knowledge and lived experience. You need to inject that into what AI is spitting out as a part of this. But it may give you opportunities and pointers for that.
Yeah. AI can't replicate taste. Like that taste is the sum total of all the experiences that we've had where we then build a reference range and we go, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is high quality, this is low quality. And the more experiences we have, the better our taste gets as far as being able to decipher what is good and what is bad. I've found that just this morning, I was using it to draft some sales emails, like some cold outreach to people I'd never met before. And I gave it a bunch of context and said, write the cold email. And it came back and it had some really good stuff, but it was not a ready email to send. And I was able to go back and I changed it and I put it back in and said, what about this? And it said, oh, that's actually way better for these reasons, but I would still recommend you tweak this one last thing. And so it was like, I was using it as a collaboration partner, but it was still my taste from 20 something years in sales where I was like, yeah, that still reads funny to me. I'm going to go in now. And now it's going to be a give and take with it. I still own the skill on my end.
And the one thing that I will say is what you are describing is imagine yourself entering the working world for the very first time. You've duplicated yourself and you are now entering. You have a limited set of knowledge and experience with it. How would you cultivate? How would you coach yourself into eventually becoming you with it? Now you have the opportunity to have multiple versions. I like to use multiplicity with, why can't I think of Michael Keaton,
I
where he
love
had
that
multiple
movie.
copies of himself with it,
Yeah.
and then divvying up the jobs and the responsibilities around it. And they're all of various different capabilities with it. It's the same kind of thing when it comes to AI, because what AI does is it industrializes human behavior, but it doesn't eliminate the human out of it. There's
Yeah.
still human qualities that are critically important throughout an entire process. And that's essentially why you come in. And that's why we hire people, is because of those human qualities, those judgment calls, those decisions on how to cultivate AI, as well as self-improve them themselves with it.
Yeah. I love the multiplicity reference, by the way.
Yeah.
I just have to say, like when he's shaving his tongue and puts the pizza in his wallet, and then the other one goes, you know, when you make a copy of a copy and it's not quite as good as the original?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a deep cut, but I love that movie. Brings me back. So we've been talking about how to assess our own hidden structures, our own hidden systems. If we're a leader and we're looking out at our team, how do we uncover the hidden systems there?
It's, at least on a small scale, it's the same behavior with it. I was actually just talking to somebody about this today, is how do I apply this concept, what you talk about in the book and that type of thing? And I say, if you were a leader, you are generally aware of all of the challenges that you face, your team faces, your organizational process face with it to some degree with it. Can I ask questions to understand why we have these challenges? Because if the documented system was working every single time, then we wouldn't have any issues, any problems. So where can I go and start asking these questions? And so if I have, if I'm looking at all this dynamic happening like between an email and instant message exchange relating to a process, can I ask the question, what kind of behaviors are happening here? And what is potentially, and infer the root cause of these behaviors? Just asking a simple question with it. Now, that's a super high level question relating to that, but it gets you started. You can start being more prescriptive about what it starts coming out and asking more questions and more questions until you get something that has some pretty solid bearing. Okay, I can see this dynamic happening here. What do you do with that afterwards? Ideal thing is make it human. Go talk to the people, say, is this happening? Is this what's the challenge we're facing with it? Let's talk about how we can overcome this and improve. And when I talk about onboarding AI to a company, I think a lot of times the companies are moving too fast because a lot of times they're designing AI solutions based on the documented system. And what they really need to be using AI for is the undocumented system. And it requires a combination of understanding the challenges you are facing and your own company kind of self discovery, and being able to communicate and collaborate with all these people to say, where's there an opportunity that we can take this burden off so we can grow as a company, not necessarily eliminate people or anything like that, because this is the one thing I talk about, is a lot of people in all various positions, executive leaderships all the way down to ground level people. We have a treasure trove of a backlog of things that we never get to do. And a lot of those things are proactive capabilities and measures and ideas that never happen and never surface. Now, if we can streamline these types of processes and behaviors, that gives us an opportunity to think critically, take advantage of those ideas and opportunities, and move the company forward. That's really the kind of way of thinking that I'm hoping companies can start first before they start building solutions and trying to change the company. You need to change yourself first and be willing to change yourself.
Yeah. Always starts in the mirror, right?
Yep, exactly.
This might be a place to introduce the concept of system or process drift.
There's a couple different ways to talk about this, but I will just talk about it in the more realistic way and how it happens within an organization. When you talk about the documented process, things are communicated up. This is how we do. Things are put into presentations. Executive leaders believe this is how we do things with it. But as soon as some kind of situation happens where the documented process doesn't work for whatever particular reason, someone figures out a way to address the issue or address the problem. And if that happens enough, then it becomes an embedded pattern as a part of the process with it. And it happens all different types of layers of a process with it. So one thing I kind of talk about from an organization standpoint is the biggest identifying artifact from a company on how much undocumented business processes out there is the spreadsheet. That is the natural, most comfortable tool that business uses to address a business need and a business problem, because I have this ad hoc database that I can put data in, I can track things in, and companies have thousands of these to handle sub business process A, B, and C with it. And so that's a natural artifact of the drift. And that's how I discovered these. Like, why are you doing this in Excel? Why are you doing this? No one else gave us a solution, but I still have to do the job. And so I'm doing it with what I know with it. And this is one reason why I don't like the term shadow IT, because it kind of signifies that the business did something wrong. And in most cases, they're not. They're just trying to survive. An expectation was given to them. They didn't have any other options, so they're using what tools are available to them.
Yeah, they're just trying to figure it out. They're trying to do things quickly.
Yeah.
So how do we figure out how much of this to allow and how much of this not to allow? I could see there being a really good case for understanding and recognizing that no system is going to be perfect, and we want people to be creative and solve problems on their own. Hopefully they're surfacing those back to us so we can solve them systematically or systemically. But I could also see, on the other hand, that if everybody's doing the job differently, jobs that we need to be repeatable, that then could become a huge Bermuda Triangle where work goes to die. So how do we find that balance between, hey, figure it out, do what you got to do, and you got to play within the guidelines here?
I think the biggest thing usually the first step to any problem is recognizing you have a problem. And so as an organization, you have to accept that we have these organizational dynamics. We understand generally why they exist and why do they occur. And I spend a lot of time in the book explaining why they occur as a part of this. And don't think negatively about it. Think of it as an opportunity as an organization to improve us. And so it takes time, as from a collaboration standpoint, let's, instead of looking at all of these huge major enterprise systems, which may be a component of our organizational process, let's focus on these undocumented steps around it that are relating to these things where we have bottlenecks and challenges to streamline different things. And first focus on the things that have ROI with it. Because the one thing around AI in this AI world, like, there's all kinds of tooling out there that doing all these great things like co-work and all this kind of stuff. But that's still all self-service. That's me self-servicing myself with that. That what you talk about is that step could apply to everyone in the whole company and provide value relating to a business process. So if you see something like that, then, and it's worth it, then maybe it's time to create a controlled AI solution to solve and address that problem, because you don't want hundreds of different copies of the same solution in there. You're just going to get the same thing like you did with Excel spreadsheets. So,
well, and to your point, you need the flexibility as an organization to be able to go build it then. Because if everybody's maxed out all the time, then you're never going to get it built. So this is where you need a little bit of free time. You need a little bit of buffer room to be able to go build those things. Funny enough, as I was doing the research on Cowork, Claude Cowork, on their website, they tell the creation story of how that tool came to be. Mm-hmm. And so Claude originally had chat, and then they rolled out Claude Code. And apparently a bunch of their employees were using Claude Code to create their own workarounds to the Claude chat so that they could get persistent memory and some of these other things that chat is weak at. Mm-hmm. And so they somehow figured out this hidden system, and exactly what you just described, that all these different engineers in their business were using one tool to work around the other tool. And they were like, wait a minute, rather than having everybody do this, like there should be a better way for that. We should have a tool that just does the thing they want it to do. And then lo and behold, they went out and they found that a bunch of their customers were using it the same way. And they're like, all right, there's a viable market here. And so then they rolled out Cowork, and suddenly that became, I don't know if it's more popular than chat, but it's definitely in the zeitgeist right now, probably the most talked about tool out there. So it was interesting. Like somehow they were able to recognize that this was going on and was getting out of hand, and they just weaponized it, right? Or productized it, I should say.
Yeah, I like to use the term the business finds a way. And that's really is. The business will find a way. And so you have to accept that, and that's a reality. And that's why I talk about the business needs to keep doing their jobs, and they're going to utilize whatever is put in front of them, and not necessarily put in front of them, to get that done. And so how do you build a company, an ecosystem where there's an acceptable use of self-service, and then there is a culture where, hey, we should really push for a centralized solution and have them be a part of that kind of communication push and be comfortable with that and have opportunity and flexibility to make that happen.
I can't remember the name of the book, but there's a book out there. I think it's about the British cycling team, and they were terrible. And they had a coach who came in, and the coach said, look, rather than try to do this the old-fashioned way, we are going to strip apart every aspect of what we do, and we're going to try to get 1% better at absolutely everything we do. And if we can get these 1% marginal gains, then we can add them together and we'll get huge gains in the long run. And lo and behold, they put together winning teams. And I wish I could remember the name of the book. I will try to research it and put it in the show notes. But that's what I think of when I hear you saying this. I think of so many of us want to set a process and be like, great, now the work is done. And that is great work. But really, I find that if you want to stay relevant, you have to continue to tweak and refine and adjust, and you have to add stuff and cull stuff. And sometimes you have to do a complete overhaul of a certain area, but like you always have to be adjusting. It just feels like relentless, but it's so critical if you want to stay in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And AI is an opportunity to give every single person in the organization the breathing room to do that with it. And if you see through that lens and that opportunity as a company and as an employee, so the fear, that what I call the psychological safety, that becomes less of an issue and less of a problem, because ultimately as a company, you're saying you still matter. We still need you to be a part of this system. And we recognize the challenges as a company, what we put ourselves through with this, on creating all this undocumented dynamic. And there will always be an undocumented dynamic. But how can we build a culture to take advantage on reducing that and streamlining that in compartmentalized ways and larger ways to move the company forward? And then you just have an overall brightened culture and people that want to stay around as a part of the company, because you're investing in your employees to be better while you're investing in the company to be better.
Yeah. But the other thing I think that it can do if you get this right is, I've been thinking about this recently, is if you are relying on your top leaders to make decisions on strategy and push that strategy and those processes down, you need those leaders to be really freaking good, right? They have to be really good at getting out and understanding their people and the systems and the dynamics. They have to be really good leaders. They have to be really empathetic. They have to be really smart at whatever they do. And there's a few people and you need them to be good. Otherwise it's going to go bad. Whereas what you're saying is, if you just are paying attention to all the way that work is evolving on the ground level with all of the employees, you'll start to pick up patterns that you can then bring up into the rest of the business. And you don't need everybody to be a genius. You just need a couple people across the organization to be progressive, and your odds of success pulling from the many, pulling great ideas from the many is higher than the odds of one leader or a small team being able to continuously drive innovation across an entire organization.
Yeah, it's basically cultural roll up. You focus on the small culture and allow those small cultures to roll up to a bigger one, until you eventually get to the very top. It's not a top down, it's a bottom up cultural change. And that's why I say AI is a change management exercise for the company, but it's not about AI. It's about changing who you are as an organization, the way you think about as an organization. And that's why I said you need to have some self-realization to that, and you need to understand the things that you do well, also the skeletons in the closet with that in order to move beyond that. And then the inbox is where you can help understand where that is.
Yeah. So let's say that we're an organization that buys in. Somebody listens to this and they're like, David, O'Brien, I'm in. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to go, we're going to start paying attention. We're going to survey how people are working. We're going to bubble these ideas up and we're going to roll them out to the whole organization. Well, inherent in that is not everybody's doing the thing that the innovative people are doing. And so there's
Sure.
still an element of change management here
Mm-hmm.
where we've got to get people who are following the legacy process or created some other bad process
Mm-hmm.
on board to follow. What have you seen makes the biggest difference and helps adoption to new ways of thinking so that we can I get that there will be drift over time, but at certain points we have to create resets, right? Okay, let's reset back to this new baseline. What can leaders do to be most successful in that reset?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to approach it. The most successful way is to engage all your people and talk to your people. There's a lot of people. That's a lot of conversation with it in order to be able to make that happen. So giving the people the tools to kind of help understand and discover those processes by maybe even distributing prompts out to companies and say, hey, ask these questions, come together as a team and a group, and what do you find out? What does your dynamic tell you as a company? But I think in a more realistic standpoint is look at your artifacts. A lot of technology people don't see a shared mailbox as a solution, but the business does. Every business sees a shared mailbox. I have an input controlled communication process. I manage a business process. I have a shared mailbox, and then I have outcomes from that. That's what the business cares about. They care about step by step to an outcome that they hope to be able to gain for it. So look at your artifacts. If you're an organization that has 5,000 shared mailboxes, why? What kind of business process is it serving? Why do we need 5,000 shared mailboxes as a company? Because that is a artifact that illustrates where there may be opportunity to improve and streamline things with it. Same way with auditing Excel files and collaboration lists and all these types of things. Like, why do these exist? There are still large companies that are still using Access databases as a solution out there every day on file shares. Why do these things exist? And trying to go from a self-discovery standpoint. And this is something I'm encouraging any consulting company is to get out there and start discovering these things, because that's really what needs to be streamlined as far as trying to move the companies forward, is to eliminate a lot of these legacy processes, legacy debt, technical debt with it, because they exist for whatever particular business reason for it. Let's discover, let's create opportunity, because that's the only way to make the company moving forward.
I like that. The other cheat, I think I maybe have talked about it on a recent change episode too, but the other cheat, back to your point about like, you can't talk to everybody.
Yeah.
I think people appreciate understanding that you've talked to somebody.
Yes.
Right. So going out and doing a certain amount of discovery and then being able to communicate back, hey, we talked to people like you, like your general sentiments are probably captured in what we got because we were so thorough in this. And I think that people will give you that grace at least.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, you've made an effort. You're showing authenticity. You're showing that you care in that regard with it. And we want to help improve as far as from a messaging standpoint. So I think messaging, communication, change management are critical. And the one thing is, when this changing world around AI, when you look at the mobile phone changed all kinds of business process and with it.
Yeah, everything.
But there were several years of change and cultivation to get to the point where essentially how the mobile phone is used every day. AI, it was like that. It was there. It was in people's experiences like almost instantly in comparison to something like that. So then you have people rejecting it. You have people don't know what to do with it. There's a degree of chaos around it. And it's time to slow down to bring into where does this really fit in. And this is what I ultimately get from a book standpoint is AI and people are eventually going to be like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
There's things that humans are going to do well, and there's things that AI is going to do well, and eventually it's going to fit and work together, and they're going to rely on each other in order to create what needs to happen.
Yeah. And I even disagree a little bit with your comment there around AI just suddenly happened and it was here and everybody was using it. I think that was the impression that the like media and social media created. But I think the rollout has been much slower than that. And it's still fast, right? It's still like everybody wants to adopt it, but like I can't tell you how many, I mean, almost every company I talk to still has not figured out their full AI strategy yet. And I don't think anybody knows what the products are really going to look like. And there's a couple different directions it could still go. And at this point, and this will come out in 2026, like AI has been around for a couple years now. Mm-hmm. And so I think the whole like, hey, take your time, figure this out. You're okay. You're not going to fall behind. I just think that reassurance is helpful because it is taking time. And yes, it all of a sudden arrived and it was transformative and it seemed like a magic trick. But as far as the actual adoption goes, I think we're still very much in the infancy phase of figuring out what this is actually going to look like and how we're going to use it and how it's going to evolve. It still feels like we're in like iPhone 1.0 kind of.
I agree. I think that's the reality of it. I think just what I was mainly referring to is like how it was being communicated and how people are perceiving it at this point.
It's perceived that way for sure.
Yeah. But working with companies and that kind of stuff with it, you are absolutely 100% right. It is a slow progression. There's still a lot of people like, I don't even know what to do with it. I don't even know how to integrate it. And that's where the message of the book is to create the right frame of mind when approaching AI in your organization. And you need to think about all of these dynamics that you have as an organization. Now AI is a third presence coming into the organization. What does that really mean? What do I really have to think about?
The theme that I pulled from the book, one question that I wrote at the end, I scribbled a note that said, isn't this whole book just a book about discovery and making the case for discovery? And by discovery, when you think about a design process, so I've done some episodes on here on design thinking and on experience design, which is one of my favorite topics. And the piece that people continue to miss, or at least this is what experts say, and it's what I've seen, is we want to go to creation. We want to go to, oh, here's AI. I'm going to start doing XYZ with it. I'm going to take this job that I'm doing and I'm just going to start doing it with AI. Mm-hmm. But in any good design process, where you should spend almost the bulk of your time is on the discovery process, like figuring out what is actually going on, where the opportunities are, how the people are feeling, why they're doing the work that they're doing. Every section of your book came down to making the case for really getting to know what is going on so that then when you start to make these decisions, you can be making them in the right way. Would you disagree with that assessment or?
No, that's the whole idea. It is a discovery. Slow down and rediscover yourself as a person, as a leader, as your team, as an organization.
Yeah.
Now's the time to do this. But what I talk about when designing a solution or approaching AI is designed to mimic human behavior. So make it human. That's the idea. The good and the bad. You need to understand the things that you do well and the things that you don't do well with it. Because if you really want to understand where that opportunity is, you need to understand that. And the biggest thing is like, how can I understand it? What tools are available to me to create that? And as I said, the documented one, that's easy to figure out and document. It's the undocumented. And where can I go to find that? You go find that in the inbox there. And that will help you at least create the starting place in some of these areas where there may be opportunity to self-discover and move forward.
David, I think that puts a very nice bow on the conversation that we've been having, and it really was a fun one. And I think it will be helpful for people. If nothing else, just the concept of slow down, take some time, be smart about it. I just think that advice in and of itself is great advice and helpful for people. But I think the rest is great framing on how to approach a problem that we're all thinking about right now. So anything that we did not cover that you're like, oh, we got to get this in, people need to know this?
There's, even right now, even with some of the stuff that's going on, there's still a lot of individual contributors that are afraid what's going to happen, afraid what this change ultimately means. What I really tried to do with this book is to try and understand how they work as a person and help their leaders understand how they work as a person and why they're important. And so one thing I talk about, and I don't think a lot of people get a chance to hear, is thank you. As a contributor to this world, the opportunity, you provide great, amazing value to the world. Thank you. And I appreciate, and I'm sure all of us appreciate the things that you do every day, and you will still be important in the future to come.
I love that. All right. That is a great place to wrap. Everybody listening, thank you. Hope this has been helpful. I always encourage people listening, reach out if these are issues that you have. And this is what David does. He consults on this. He's written the book on it. So buy the book, reach out to him. The people that we bring on this show are people who are practitioners doing this every day. So I just always want to remind people that. And you can find all the links to everything that we have talked about in the show notes. Good luck with your hidden systems and your discovery, figuring out who you are and how to be better as a person, as a team, as an organization. I love that. All the best.
Thank you for having me.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.